Welcome back to Windows Server Administration Fundamentals. I am Thomas Willingham.
I'm Christopher Chapman. I'm just going to continue sitting here pensively.
We are here to discuss and demonstrate monitoring and troubleshooting servers.
Well, monitoring. I don't know about troubleshooting. I'm hoping we don't have any problems to fix.
Well, no, we're not going to fix a problem. We're just going to discuss methodologies, processes, things to look at, tools.
I think I can handle that. Sounds like a good method.
Yeah. So let's talk about our objectives. Understanding performance, using the event viewer, booting the system, introducing business continuity, fault tolerance, and introducing troubleshooting methodology. One thing that's nice is having a process to follow when things go wrong. And we will talk about that. So the ITIL, the Information Technology Infrastructure Library.
So I'm going to jump in on this one because I know ITIL pretty well. I don't have any certifications for ITIL, but I thought about it for a minute. It's about the extent of my ITIL past. ITIL is a framework for essentially operating an IT department. Everything. Service management, operations management, and operations running. Really everything. It's a framework. It's built as a framework that you can adapt to your environment and your situation. So that's really all ITIL is. And it's a gross oversimplification. It's a library of information. It's a lot of information about how best to run an IT department.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So servers, services, and applications. When you start to use services, and applications.
Servers.
I thought I said servers.
Services twice.
Oh, did I? Servers, services, and applications. You should follow appropriate steps for deployment. Ensuring that you gather your requirements appropriately. If you have a system for, let's say hosting pictures of dogs and cats, you probably don't need $1 million data center to house that data. In a similar fashion, if you are running life support systems, you probably aren't running the server in your mom's basement, no matter how nice your mom's basement is. So you want to collect the appropriate requirements. You want to design and plan appropriately. What's a good location? What are your power requirements? How many servers do you need? What type of fault tolerance? How are you going to implement and deploy? And then once you've implemented and deployed, how are you going to manage and maintain? That's something that people often forget about is they get to the pilot phase, they create a pilot of what they want to roll out. They've planned, they've piloted, they've deployed, and then once they deployed, they start to walk off, and then they completely forget about the fact that now that it's up and running, how am I going to manage it on a day-to-day basis? So troubleshooting methodology. So what this talks about is as problems arise, following a set process for figuring out what the problem is.
It will help you maintain your sanity.
It will. If you work with computers in any capacity, whether you're an end user, whether you just surf the web, or you're responsible for some enterprise level computer system, you're going to have a problem. At some point in time, you're going to have a problem.
It's going to happen.
Some problems will have a obvious solution. I can't turn my computer on. Oh, look, the power cord's out. Although sometimes that one's not so obvious.
Well, yeah, the computer won't turn on, so you spend an hour working on everything except making sure that the power cord's plugged in.
Right. But hopefully you work to that first.
What's that medical mantra? Horses, not zebras. When you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras.
Exactly.
Start simple.
Problems will help get resolved if you have a methodology to follow instead of the shotgun approach. So discovering what the problem is. If you look at the slide, this is on the slide. Discover the problem. Evaluate the system configuration. One thing is I did a lot of troubleshooting that I found helpful is immediately looking at what's new and different. Did something get changed?
What has changed? Yep.
What has changed? That's the number one. You'll go to a user and my computer stopped working. Oh, did you do anything? No, I didn't do anything.
I have more stories than I could even want to share about my phone support days way back at the beginning of my IT career, and that's the first question you ask on the phone. What'd you do?
Nothing.
Not accusatorily. What changed? Nothing changed.
Nothing changed.
No, really, what changed? No, nothing. Anything at all. Anything what? Well, nothing. We just moved the computer to a different room. That might explain why
something changed.
That might explain why the speakers don't work.
Correct. Or I just installed a new thing. Whatever that thing is.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So what's new and different? Another tack that I used to take was I would find a system that worked and find one that didn't work and compare contrast. How are they different? Is there a different setting somehow? And I would just go through, so if it's networking oriented, go through the networking components. If it's display oriented, go through the display components. But compare contrast between the two systems. List or track possible solutions and try to isolate the problem by removing or disabling hardware or software components. This goes back to you've installed something new and different, and possibly removing it, rolling back. Execute a plan. Dude, that's awesome. Plan, execute plan. Check results, take a proactive approach. In larger IT infrastructures, one thing that would be helpful is to have a common pool of knowledge. So, Christopher, and if you and I are working in the same shop, as I ran into a problem, maybe there's a common database that I can look up of you and our shared interaction problems that you encounter. You write up the problem, how you fixed it.
I'm hearing knowledge base.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
See, that does not ensure my job security.
How does that not ensure your job security?
Because if I am the only one with the knowledge, then I am crucial. No, I agree. I agree with you 100%. That's the only reason. I won't say it's the only reason. A large reason that people hold on to that knowledge is because of stuff like that. They think that if they're the only ones that have it, they're the only ones that have it. But it's terrible for an IT department.
Correct. Yeah, you get islands of information. And now something that you took 3 or 4 days to resolve, I'm taking separately 3 or 4 days to resolve, and all that information's duplicated. And
I have a terrible example of this. I personally, over the course of 18 months at a job that I had about 13 years ago now, had a problem, spent a couple of hours troubleshooting that problem. It was a device that had to be installed in a computer. It was a very specific install process that had to be carried out for this card to work in this computer. And I did it, and it was very specific. It was very, very, very finite. It took me about 2 hours, and I thought to myself, I don't need to document this. It's the only one in the building. We're never going to need another one of these. It's a very special system. I don't need to worry about it. 6 months later, get a request to install another one. Man, I wish I'd written this down. All right, well, I can sort of remember it. Let's go through it again, get it all done. Still took me about 2 hours. Should have taken me about 15 minutes. Thought to myself, what are the odds? What are the odds? We got 2 now. We're never going to need another one of these. Still did not write it down. 6 months later again. Third request, same device. What's wrong with me? Why haven't I written this down twice? Worst example I have of not doing that, even for myself, not having a central location for that data. And we had one. I just opted not to use it and ended up spending 6 hours over a year period installing something that after the first 2 hours could have taken me about 15 minutes each of the subsequent times.
Well, and there's another reason people don't want to use those types of systems. Well, I just spent 4 hours a day, a week, a month troubleshooting this issue. I don't want to have to spend another hour or 2 day to document this.
Fixed. I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah. Peace out, ripcord, boom, parachute goes, I'm out. By taking however long it takes to document this. So let's say it took you 15 minutes to document that.
Would have saved me
4 hours.
7.5 hours.
Oh, that's right, even more.
Or no, because it was just the 2. Would have saved me,
4+ hours. And for solutions that like take days, weeks, or whatever to troubleshoot, that can be considerable cost savings.
Yep.
Troubleshooting tools. So these are tools that you can use to help troubleshoot the problems. Device manager, system information, event viewer. These are all excellent tools to help you narrow the scope of your problem. Event viewer, you can look at the events in the system to figure out what happened right before the problem occurred. Typically, when the problem occurred, you may or may not get an event in there because the problem may have caused the event viewer from writing an event. But you can kind of see the state of the system before it failed. I've gone into customers before and was looking at Event Viewer, and I'm like, why did you reboot your server so many times? And they're like, whoa, what? I'm like, why did you reboot your server like 5 times in this half-hour period? Oh, well, we were just trying to fix stuff. And by the way, how did you know we rebooted our server so many times? Well, I looked in the Event Viewer.
It's in there.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to be accusatory, wasn't trying to... At that point, you're just trying to gather information. That's the biggest thing about troubleshooting is gathering as much information as you can. Being Inspector Columbo, and then just before you nail it, I have just one more question. And that's when you knew he had it and he was going to nail somebody. For those of you that are younger, go look it up. Peter Falk was an amazing Columbo. And then there are additional tools that you can use to troubleshoot your server. These are more Microsoft-specific tools. There are a lot of excellent third-party tools that can help you troubleshoot and narrow down. What you'll find are some of the best tools are more proactive tools that as things start to occur, they'll give you a heads up or a warning that, hey, I'm seeing some of this start to occur, and when I see this, that normally means that this could happen. You should be warned. So now we have a demo. It's Christopher time to show system information.
Oh, do we now?
Yes.
All right, let me close this. Maximize that. System information. MS Info 32.
Yes.
Ta-da. System information. So not necessarily a troubleshooting tool, but an information gathering tool, which we've talked about is a huge part of troubleshooting. Gathering as much information as you can. This is going to be your first bet. It gives you a lot of good information. It gets into some detail. You can get tools that will give you more detail, will get more finite into all of the individual pieces, but you do have more components. You've got memory. It's going to take a minute. And we wait. But I'll wait for this. What's the next tool?
Event Viewer.
Event Viewer. I'll open that while we're waiting for system information. And all these tools are going to be available in either control panel or in your administrative tools. At the very least, you've seen what I do. It's one of two things. Either start and search system information, or Windows R, which is how I tend to do it, and launch things with the run line. Event Viewer.
But now to use the run line command, you must know the name of the tool.
Yeah, you've got to know the actual file name that you're launching.
Correct. So
not the name of the tool.
Yeah, yes, the name of the file name.
Yep.
If you use the start menu, you can use the name of the tool.
Yep. Event Viewer. Oh, now we're back up on system information. So here I've gone to display, so I'm getting more information about the video device. In this case, it's a virtual machine, so Microsoft Virtual Machine Bus Video Device.
Right. And in here, not necessarily so much for the virtual machine, but in here, maybe you have a device driver that's old or bad or doesn't work on your configuration. So you can start looking at files, you can start looking at drivers, and then going to the web and searching.
Mm-hmm. Event Viewer. This did change a couple of versions back. Into this, we have our custom views and our application and services logs, which we're not going to go into. But we do have our Windows logs application. Which hopefully should be pretty decent. No, I'm not worried about SharePoint. Probably search related, honestly. In fact, it says search for some of it. I should probably look into that. But and I can actually come in here and I can filter this. So I'm seeing all of these SharePoint errors. Filter current log. And I can't filter out the SharePoint quickly and easily, so I'm not going to worry about that. I can change my event sources to things I know might be problematic to filter out the SharePoint errors. And I've got other ones. System. Unexpected failure of a disk at 3 o'clock. Interesting. Not of a disk, but of the virtual disk service provider. So yeah, this is it.
And you can use this. Notice there's a description, log name, more information.
Yep, and even here, event log online help. You can click on this and it's going to take you right to this error online if there's information to be had. What else do we have?
Task Manager.
Alrighty. Well, this one's a little tricky. Normally, to get into Task Manager on a computer you're sitting at, Control-Alt-Delete. And if I do that, it takes me to this screen on the local computer, not the server I'm remoted into.
Correct. What is the issue here? Why when you Control-Alt-Delete, are you getting your local system and not the server that you're attached to as if you were local?
I don't know what the specific reasons are. It's just a hotkey.
It's a remote desktop server.
Yeah, it's a remote desktop,
services.
so I'm missing. There are some commands that the local computer is going to watch for first.
Correct.
So this is Task Manager in Server 2012. This is actually a Windows 8 installation, I believe, on this computer. Mr. Producer hiding back there. Mm-hmm. So, but it's the same look and feel as Windows Server 2012, 2012 R2. Your apps. I really like this view. I also really like the performance view. It's a great interface. This is terrific.
One thing that's really nice is in that area, you can see something that's hogging a whole bunch of CPU resources. Yep. You can see something that's hogging a whole bunch of RAM. Every once in a while, if I have a computer that's having a problem, I'll go into Task Manager and just look for an item I don't recognize, and I'll search on it.
I'll actually have a good example here in just a second of something taking up a lot of resources.
Oh, there we go.
So I'm in 2008. I'm remoted. I can't use Control-Alt-Delete. So I could either use the Hyper-V hotkeys or right-click on the taskbar, start Task Manager. Or, just for those who want to be uber geeky, Task MGR. Here are my tools, or here are my tasks that are running. I go right to performance always. Look at my memory. Blam!
Totally pegged.
This is a web server. Oh, I'm yelling into the microphone. The producer's going to start throwing stuff at me. It's a web server. It always looks like this. All the time. So I can come in here and I can sort on memory usage and I can see IIS, IIS, IIS. It's all web that's doing all that, that's taking up all that memory, except for SharePoint, which is technically still web.
Now, it says that your RAM is pegged. Mm-hmm. Does that necessarily indicate a problem?
No, not necessarily. I mean, the server's still perfectly functional and not lagging at all. And the fact it's a virtual machine helps in that. I'm not necessarily using all of the memory of a physical box. It being a virtual box, I don't want to say memory management is better or worse. It's just different.
Correct.
So I'm going to minimize that. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this open. We're going to do a little experiment. We're going to reset IIS services, and we're going to watch what happens to these metrics, and then I'll probably get a bunch of messages from people that I just turn the websites off on.
Oh, oops.
I may or may not host some websites for some other projects that I'm involved in, so we'll see what happens in the next couple of minutes. This actually shouldn't take long. It should take about 30 seconds. But you'll see some pretty dramatic changes in this memory count. And I should set it up so that this happens on a regular basis. I just haven't yet.
Just to clear caches,
like a once a night,
stuff.
Yeah, IIS reset. So you can see it continues to fall. We could go to processes and actually watch these as they stop, all these IIS worker processes. See, they all fell off. So I got a dip and a dip and a dip, and then that last one took out these last couple.
And notice the processor heartbeat as stuff is getting crunched.
Yep. And the processor just kind of hanging out at 1%, 5%, 10%. So there we go. Now IIS is restarted. Now I still have this. The rest of this memory in use is SharePoint. So I'd have to really kind of restart. I could restart SharePoint services, but I'd just restart the server at some point to free all this up and kind of restart it. But that's Task Manager, what it shows you and what it shows you in a graphical view. I am going to go a step further, not in demo because I didn't install these tools, but I'm going to highly, highly, highly recommend for anybody troubleshooting anything, whether it's desktops or servers or applications, download sysinternals.
Oh, yes.
Learn how to use sysinternals. Process Explorer, it's a phenomenal suite of tools for troubleshooting anything. Not that I have any, I love Task Manager, I love Event Viewer, I use them all the time, but the tools in sysinternals are spectacular.
They just allow you to go that much further.
Yep, they really do. And you can watch videos from the author of those tools, and he walks you through some pretty spectacular things with those tools. I think Process Explorer is the biggest one. What's the other one? There are two that I use on a regular basis. I can't remember what they are. But the whole suite, everything in the suite is pretty spectacular.
Did you want to show Windows Performance Monitor?
Yes, let's do some perfmon. And the reason I say perfmon is because I'd type perfmon. We also, again, have it in administrative tools or Windows Start Performance. There it is. Performance Monitor is, this is actually a very good conversation. It depends on who you ask what this tool is and what it's good for. A lot of people want to use this as a real-time monitoring tool for your server. Right now I've got processor time is my only counter, and it's showing me processor time over time. If I want to sit here and watch this all day, I can. If I'm using this to monitor basics, processor, memory, disk, I can use Task Manager if I want to just sit and watch it in real time. What Performance Monitor lets me do is collect this data over time without having to sit here and watch it. And then I can go in and I can look at it later. That's what these data collector sets are for. We're not going to build them. Again, we're not going to get to that level, but that's what this tool is for. Collecting performance data over time and then reviewing it after the fact.
Right. So Task Manager is good for a snapshot at any given point in time. Performance Monitor is more over a time period.
Well, Task Manager is a real-time tool. It's I want to sit here and look at what's going on. You can do that here. I've got a processor counter already. Let's find a memory counter. What's a good? There we go. Page faults a second. That's a good counter for memory problems. One very, very, very important thing to note. Well, one, don't make your lines the same color. Two, don't hang up your server. The scale on these, see right here it says scale 1.0 and 0.1. What that means is the processor time, over on the left it's 0 to 100. The processor time is giving me real numbers 0 to 100. So that red line, when it's up around 90, means it's at 90. The memory is a 0.1 scale, which means if this is giving me 10, if you look at these, look at the actual numbers here, that 10 is actually 100. Up here, when it was up around 90, it's around 900, 889. So that's something to be aware of when you're using this tool. But again, I'm going to create data collector sets, monitor this data over time, look at that data as a whole snapshot of server performance over a period of time. It's kind of fun. I'd like to come in here every now and then and just add 100 counters and just look at all the funny lines and graphs, because that's what I do sometimes.
Ensuring overall server network health. So we've talked about troubleshooting methodology. We've talked about some troubleshooting tools. You've demoed some troubleshooting tools. Now let's additionally talk about getting help. You have some information and you're not sure what to do with it. You'll eventually encounter problems you're not going to know how to fix. Having coworkers at your disposal can be helpful. People that have been there around for a while, different environments are going to have their own quirks that you need to become aware of. Some research on the old internets is very helpful. Good search engines such as, Bing is even called out here. Good search engines
course
such
it
as
is.
Bing will give you great information. There's also some specific sites that you can use for searching on error codes and things of that nature that are really helpful. Also, check your vendor websites for your hardware and software.
Yep. Something I was told a long time ago at the very beginning, even before my IT career really started. It was my first IT job that we were in training, a 4-week training before I actually started on Phone Sport. And he said, it's not how much you know. It's not about knowing everything. It's about knowing where to find everything.
Exactly.
And if you know where to find everything and you have the ability to find it quickly, you're pretty much unstoppable.
Because honestly, technology moves so quickly. There's new stuff out all the time. You're never going to know everything. It's as simple as that. You're just not. But knowing where to go when you do have a problem, like Christopher said, that to me is the mark of an excellent admin.
Yep.
It's somebody who knows, who can go into an environment they're not familiar with and still be successful.
And don't panic early.
No.
Panic when it's, appropriate.
Don't panic early. Oh, and another piece of advice that I got was never be surprised when it works. So if you've done something 3 or 4 times and it doesn't work and then all of a sudden it works, don't be like, oh, great, it worked. Yeah, just be like, yeah, okay, it worked. Be cool. Be cool.
Then document that.
Yes. Yeah. Booting the system. So part of troubleshooting is ensuring that your system can actually boot. And having a system that doesn't boot can be pretty frustrating.
Kind of a problem.
Yeah. So yeah, if it won't, Windows won't boot, you can't log into Windows. Yeah, that can be a problem. So to overcome this, you kind of need to understand the boot process. Mm-hmm. So, which is post. It goes through post, power on self-test, initializes the hardware, and enables the operating system to load. The MBR, the master boot record, first 512-byte boot sector of a partitioned data storage device, such as a hard drive.
A drive, yeah, it's a hard drive.
Used to hold the primary partition table, how the disk is formatted, how you bootstrap into the operating system. There'll probably be a pointer to where the operating system information is held. So the files that tell a system how to load. The volume boot record, type of boot sector stored in the disk volume on a hard disk, floppy disk, or similar data storage device that contains code for booting the operating system up. This is information such as the NT loader and the boot manager. Now, if you get in the Wayback Machine, we used to have this thing called the boot INI file. The boot INI file was a text file that told NT and Windows how to load, what the timeout was, where the Windows partition was, where the operating system files were held, and how to load those operating system files.
And not at all cryptic.
No. Oh, yeah. Here we have LUNs. So we go back to LUNs. These are LUNs and structure for how to boot, where the operating system files are and what the name of that operating system is. The new way, MoBeta, is BCD Edit, a command line tool that enables you to create these modifications without having to edit the INI file directly. So, as it says, to edit the boot configuration, use BCD Edit. Now, as you boot up into the system, one thing that you can do is go into Advanced Boot Options. So, problems occur, your system is loading up, you might be able to go into Advanced Boot Options. This is where you can go into a couple different modes. Safe mode. This is a mode that doesn't have networking on it. It basically kills a whole bunch of services that may be causing problems on your system and enables you to get booted in. Enable boot logging. One of the benefits of boot logging is As things boot up, they write into the log file. And once you know the boot order, so you know that here's how the order of my device drivers loading. I enable boot logging. I see things are loading up. All of a sudden I see after this, nothing's being loaded up. I know my boot order, so that tells me that my video card, my hard drive, my networking card, my whatever is having a problem. So that enables you to kind of narrow things down. Low resolution video. Another good one is last known good configuration. So if you've recently installed some things, you've changed the environment, and you're now unable to log in, you can use the last known good configuration, and that enables you to rolls your system back to the last time you were able to log in effectively. Debugging mode, directory services restore mode. So there's multiple ways that you can boot into your system to help start troubleshooting. And now we have a demo of system configuration, which I think we've kind of viewed, but...
No, we haven't.
Oh,
we've not done system configuration.
Okay.
So we've done system information.
Oh, you're right.
And a bunch of other tools. What I'm going to do now, msconfig. This is system configuration. And this is a boot and troubleshooting tool that's very service-based. So general, normal, diagnostic, selective. I'm not going to worry about this yet. We're going to come back to this. Boot, where I pick my OS. I can choose advanced options. I can limit things. I can turn on safe boot. I can turn on, lots of options are available. I can turn services off. Now I'm in a running OS, so I can see what's actually running, and I can only turn off the ones that I think might be a problem that are running. I don't need to worry about the ones that are already stopped. Those are clearly not a problem. Startup, this gives me a breakdown of what's in the registry that's supposed to start up when the computer starts up. And then additional tools that I can just open up and look at. So notice, as I've gone through these tabs on services, on boot, when I made some changes here, it's made a change here. It automatically went from normal to selective. So this is a tool that, the only piece of advice I have for this tool, it's pretty self-explanatory as you go through the options. Some of these you might have to read into to figure out what they are. The base video versus the no GUI boot. But the most important part of this tool is undoing it when you're done. When you found your problem and you fixed your problem, go back to normal startup. You don't want this server to constantly be in a state of not running services, and then what ends up happening is if you forget, it may be a couple of days before you realize that something that was running on that server normally is now shut off and is causing another problem. And if you don't remember that you were in there messing with system config, you don't realize that it's just a checkbox that you need to reset to what it was before you did this that would fix the problem you've now caused yourself a couple of days later.
And now you're going into that whole troubleshooting methodology and just going through that, and you basically end up spending hours, days, however
that
long.
First question is, what's changed? Oh, I used msconfig and I made changes.
Exactly.
Let's go back and reset that. Yep.
Virtual memory and paging file.
Is that another demo?
Yep.
All right, so we're here. We're going to go back to something we saw earlier, and this is why I didn't go through this earlier, because I knew it was coming up later on. We're going to go to Properties. Here we are. Now remember, I can go to Change Settings, and it'll take me there, or I can go to Advanced System Settings, which is the way I'm going to do it. And we're going to Advanced and Performance. So virtual memory is something we haven't talked about. Virtual memory is the computer using the hard drive as memory when you're out of memory. So the computer has a file that, under the right circumstances, is visible at the root of your C drive. I'm going to turn on hidden. I'm going to turn off hiding protected OS. Done. And pagefile.sys. This is a file that the operating system has put on the drive that is 4 gigs in size that the OS can use to put information that would normally be intended for memory when memory is full. If you're at a computer that is just grinding the hard drive and is slow as day, or slow as what, I can't think of a good analogy for slow.
As molasses
I don't
in
want to say the
January.
normal words that come to mind because they're not appropriate for video. Yeah, if the computer is just dragging and the hard drive is going nuts, all you hear is constant hard drive activity, or the lights are signaling that, it's probably something to do with this. It's constantly reading and writing data to the disk in the place of memory because your memory's full. You've got some application somewhere that's chewing up memory. Get into Task Manager, kill the task that's running all the memory out, and you should be fine. What this lets me do is set the settings under the advanced. So I'm in Advanced Options here, Performance, Advanced tab, and I can configure the paging file. In a server with multiple hard drives, you can move the paging file off of the C drive. It's a nice performance boost. The downside is if you move it off of the C drive, you can't get all the information from memory out in a dump situation. If your computer blue screens and it dumps all of the memory information out for you to look at later to help troubleshoot, you're not going to get it all. That's, for me personally, in this environment, I don't worry about that, and I tend to move them off because I don't need dump files. That's not an enterprise environment, it's my house. So that's, in this case, it's automatically managing. I don't even have to worry about it. But I can uncheck this, and you'll have multiple drives here, again, if you've got multiple drives in the server, and you can set the information for all of them.
You can also set the size of your paging file.
That's what right here. I could go custom,
and, yep,
and set custom sizes, or I could turn it off. So typically what I would do, as I just mentioned, on the C drive, I'll click No and hit Set, and then I'll go to the D drive, and I'll do a custom size, or even system managed size, and hit Set, and then I'll click OK, and that's when I get a warning. In fact, I think, yeah, there we go. If you disable the paging file, or set the initial size to less than 400 megs, and a system error occurs, Windows might not record details that could help identify the problem. I'm not going to get a memory dump. Cancel that, cancel that, cancel that. That is memory and page file.
So we've talked about troubleshooting methodologies, we've talked about tools, we've demoed and viewed some tools. Now let's talk about business continuity, or ensuring high availability, or some form of high availability. Again, you need to evaluate what level of high availability is appropriate for your environment. High availability typically means more cost. The more highly available your system is, the more that system is going to cost to implement, to manage, and to keep running.
I would say that's pretty much a direct correlation.
Yeah. The thing about business continuity is when a server goes down, and for whatever reason, it could be a hard drive, a network card, memory, processor, power. If a server goes down for any of those reasons, your customers, your users are going to be unable to access the server, which is going to incur cost of some kind. What you need to do is figure out what that cost could be, and then from there, implement an appropriate solution. Banks typically have very highly available systems. When their systems are down for minutes, it costs them millions or billions of dollars.
Any major high transaction volume retailer, Amazon, maybe an example. I'm trying to think of other businesses. Any really large enterprise with lots of transactional, I mean, banks, that's why. It's constant transactions all the time.
Visa, Chase, those kind of systems. Major retailers, Amazon, the stock market.
Yep.
In any of those type, like you said, high transaction type systems, if they're unavailable, their cost of lost productivity becomes very high very rapidly.
Yep.
So for them, it makes sense to create these very expensive, highly available systems. And you can do that multiple ways, which we'll talk about here in a bit. High availability, depending on your level of availability, depends on what your downtime per month, what your possible downtime per month, per year is. Typically, if you sign up with a service provider or you're buying hardware or buying software, they'll come with SLAs, software licensing agreements, that give a agreement of what availability is.
Or service level agreements.
Service level, yes.
Yeah.
Service level agreement. We'll give, hey, here's what your availability is.
Here's what we guarantee.
Here's what we guarantee. So knowing what they guarantee, you can look at this list and say, oh, okay, well, they're saying 99% of the time. Well, that's 7.2 hours a month. That does or doesn't work with my environment.
Well, and I'll clarify this because I love this grid. It's a huge... I like looking at the numbers. I like working in environments where the goal is to get higher in the number of nines. What a lot of people don't realize is that the 5 nines, one of Microsoft's big goals has been for a long time, 5 nines of availability for whatever piece of software, whatever suite, whether it's Exchange, SQL, SharePoint, whatever it is. 5 nines is the goal. That is 5.5 minutes of downtime in a year. And a lot of people freak out and say, well, updating is going to take longer than that. Unplanned downtime. It should be in parentheses somewhere on that slide. Unplanned downtime. And there are plenty of ways to have highly available solutions to a lot of the pieces of software, especially Microsoft solutions, that ensure you can take down servers and not lose service availability. I can update Exchange servers all day without taking down my entire Exchange infrastructure. I can update SharePoint servers, same thing. I can update file servers, same thing. There are countless ways for me to ensure that I can do things to take servers offline gracefully and do things to them without that service being unavailable.
Yeah, just because a server goes down does not correlate to an interruption of service.
Exactly.
And we're going to talk about that next. So fault tolerance. To ensure a server is fault tolerant, you need to figure out what are the most needed components or what the possible bottleneck components could be, whether that's processor, network card, video card, whatever, and then ensure redundancy of those systems. Some components that they typically make redundant: hard drives, power supplies, network cards. These are all systems that you implement fault tolerance for to ensure that if something does fail, that you have a rollover that you can still use.
We should actually add to that list all 4 of the components, the subsystems we talked about in the beginning of this course, processor, memory, network, and storage, all actually have options these days for fault tolerance. You can buy servers, boards that have even memory fault tolerance mechanisms built into them. You can do memory mirroring so that half of your memory is functional and half your memory is a mirror in case something goes bad in this bank. It blows my mind what's possible these days.
And again, what's appropriate for your environment.
Yep, exactly. Well, it's going to be what's appropriate, what's required, what can you afford.
Correct. So we've talked about drives, network cards, things of that nature. Now let's talk about servers being fault tolerant. So now we're talking more like clustering. Clustering is multiple servers that functionally perform as a single unit. So now you have 2 or more servers working as a single unit. If one of those systems fails, the other server continues to run with minimal impact to the service. There are a couple different forms of clusters. There's failover clusters and load balancing clusters. Typically, if you have a failover cluster, you've implemented it as a load balancing cluster, so a lot of times they're the same thing.
Yes. Clustering, well, it depends.
Well, I mean, you can implement them separately.
It depends on the service. Like
correct.
SQL, you can build a SQL cluster that's not a load balance cluster.
True.
Because you can't have more than one active node in a SQL cluster.
True.
So it depends on the service, yeah. Network load balancing, easier to set up. It's still a little complicated, but not nearly as complicated as clustering, which is exponentially easier than it was 10 years ago.
Correct.
So it's fun, though. We don't get into those details in this course. You're not going to be expected to know a lot of the technical ins and outs of network load balancing or clustering. Learn it, though. That's actually some of the fun stuff for me. I love building highly available solutions. I don't know why. It's just something that I like doing.
Well, it's kind of cool to think about the fact that even though a system has failed, it continues to run.
Well, and it comes back
service is uninterrupted.
It comes back to what I was talking about earlier with my walking into a server room and pulling a hardware cable or pulling out a hot swap hard drive and seeing what happens. If I go in and smash one of these servers with a hammer, does it keep working? Does the service stay available?
Right.
Probably get fired, but it's a fun test.
Power, obviously power is
Yep.
an additional issue. Without electricity, the servers will not run.
Well, more stories. I mean, I've heard some great stories. I've experienced some great stories. If you buy a server, multiple power supplies, don't plug them into the same power strip.
Yeah.
I've seen people do that.
Oh.
I've seen people do that. Or power distribution unit. I mean, it may just be a PDU, a strip that comes with the cabinet that the servers are in, whatever the case may be. I also knew somebody who was involved in the planning and building of an entire data center, built the building, built all the specs, designed everything. They ran one power main into the building. So regardless of the fact they have all of this redundancy in the server room, if the power to the building fails, they're down. Now, again, we're into the realm of incredibly expensive solutions. You're building a multi-million-dollar data center where you're going to want to consider, can we get basically 2 grids worth of power coming into the same building in case one fails, the other one stays up. So that is an exercise in potential insanity if you want to get to the, I think of fractals. How no matter how deep you get, it's always the same.
Right.
Fault tolerance and redundancy are like that. You can go out as large or down as small as you want and always find something you can make redundant somehow. So, but power's a fun one. It's one of those ones that's very simple to overlook something ridiculous like plugging 2 power supplies into the same power strip.
Well, and possibly overcoming a single power source with a UPS.
Yep. UPSs are, those are just a kind of a requirement for these kind of solutions. So, I'm trying to think of any other stories, any other good. When I think of UPSs, well, we'll get to this. There's more coming up that I'll tell another story.
Okay. Protecting data. So you have data stored on the drive. Drives fail. I like protecting data. It represents hours of work, and its data is sometimes irreplaceable. I'd say that was true.
Yep.
The data on your drive does represent hours of work, even if you're just doodling or journaling or whatever. But the data itself is the unique IP on that server. Especially for your company, you have certain number of hours worth of work that your employees or your users have put in, and they want to ensure that that content is safeguarded. At the end of the day, hardware fails, sometimes power fails, sometimes software fails. Having a failure, honestly, is a matter of time. How long have you had the system? How long have you been a system administrator? A good system administrator prepares for these failures. Sometimes when there's a failure, you will have data loss. The idea is to minimize your impact on these issues or with these issues. One is with a backup. Backups do exactly what they say. They take a snapshot of your data at any given point in time and store it somewhere else. There's different ways that you can store it, but it copies the data to ensure that if something happens, that data can be copied back on. They can be used to restore the entire system, the data. There's numerous levels of backup. When planning backups, it's a good idea to isolate data from program or applications. Your application files typically stay pretty static. Your data files typically are the ones that change, that get revised. So the data is important. I'm not saying the applications aren't, but for the intellectual property of your company, it's the data that you want to ensure that you're copying.
Yeah, you can reinstall server. You
Correct.
can't just reinstall the data you've generated as a company.
Correct. System state. So system state is how your server is set up and the system components associated with that at any given time. They can be backed up pretty easily. The boot files, the DLLs cache folder, the registry, sysvol. So these are all included in system state. If you're not changing your server, this isn't going to change.
Well, and it's also stuff that, I'm trying to think of how to word this politically correctly. if you're doing deployment methodologies correctly, system state backups aren't as important.
Correct.
Because your deployment methods are going to account for all of the configuration aspects of a given server. Active Directory takes care of a lot of it. Group policy takes care of a lot of it. Deployment methodologies take care of the rest of it in a perfect world. So whether or not you do a system state backup, that's one that may be a question. You may never do a system state backup if you don't need to. But if you have servers that are dependent on it, or the system state changes regularly, or you don't have a fully matured deployment process, then you may be doing that.
Your media management methods. So once you've created the backup, how are you managing that media? There's a couple different types. There's online storage. So at any given time, you can access that storage. There's nearline. This might be a data jukebox. So it's available, but it may not be immediately available. Maybe the tape carousel has to change to that tape. So it's available, just not instantaneously available. Offline is it's on site, but maybe it's in a tape in a drawer, so it's not.
Hopefully at least labeled correctly.
Oh, yeah, definitely, definitely. And then there's backup site or DR site availability. Now, one thing that people don't think about is some people are very diligent about their backups. I create my backups every day. I'm very diligent about it. I have my backup methodology down, and I store my backup tapes next to my server. That's great unless you have a fire or you have some kind of catastrophe that destroys your site. Now, your server and all your backup copies are destroyed on site. That's why backup sites or off-site storage has become so popular, is even if your site is destroyed, your data is still available. Corporations that have multiple locations, multiple geographic locations, will sometimes do backups from one site to another geographic location to ensure data redundancy. If one site goes offline, the other site has that data. Types of backups. There's full backups with incremental backups, and full backups with differential backups. Full backup, pretty straightforward. All of the data is backed up. The incremental backup, Christopher and I were talking about this earlier. I had mixed incremental and differential up earlier. Incremental is a backup. So you do your full level backup, and then any files that change get backed up that night. So then the next day you have files that change, they get backed up. So once you've done your main backup, you do incrementals each night that only back up the files that have changed for that day. When you perform a restore of that method, you have to restore the full backup. Then you have to restore each incremental in order to ensure that all of the files have been restored appropriately. The differential backup, I perform my main backup. Then each day, I back up all files that have changed. So the first day, I back up files 1 through 3 that have been backed up. The second day, I back up files 1 through 5 that have been changed. The third day, I back up files 1 through 10 that have been changed. Now, for a differential backup, I only have to restore the main backup and then the final differential. It's very important not to mix and match these differential and incremental backups. They can cause problems. The benefit of these is over time, an incremental backup will back up faster, but the restore will be slower. Over time, a differential backup will back up slower, but the restore will be faster. So you need to figure out, again, what's appropriate for your environment and then take the appropriate steps.
And if anybody wants to know, just for a little extra bonus knowledge, I finally learned this after years of dealing with backups. The way it's all tracked, every file has a flag, an archive flag on that file. When you do a backup, a full backup, that archive flag is basically turned on, saying this file's been backed up. When that file changes, that flag is turned off. and says this file has not been backed up. Or vice versa, the flag gets turned on when the file changes saying back this file up. But there's a flag that gets set when things change. Differentials and incrementals work by either changing that flag when the file is backed up or not changing that flag. It's probably beyond the scope of this exam, this course, this information. But when it comes to backups, if you learn the technology behind it, the types of backups get a little easier to remember. At least they did for me. They may not for anybody else. But
Plus, that's fun party knowledge.
it really is. Tell your friends about backups and archive flags, and they will never come over to your house again.
And you get all the game time that you want.
That's true. You will.
Unencumbered by friends.
I know. It's just they just talk. They just want to talk about stuff.
They want to eat food and talk. Yeah,
We can talk about backups. Let's talk about that.
that's right. Backup rotations. So some questions that you need to think about. How often should I do a backup? And this correlates to, well, how often does your data change? It might be that your data is encyclopedia type in knowledge where it's just being referenced, it's never being changed, at which point probably don't need to back up that frequently. Or it could be a CRM database, sales database, something of a support database, at which point that data is changing all the time where you need backups frequently. There are some places that the data is changing so frequently that they're doing backups midday and multiple times a day.
Well, I was going to say, depending on the amount of data, there are places that do backups all the time. Like, it's just a constant process.
Right. And then it talks about, it gives, and there are a huge number of backup schemes. One backup scheme is the grandfather, father, son, where you keep 3 tapes on site. This is for full backups. You keep 3 tapes at any given time. You have 1, 2, 3. The minute you hit third, you go back to this one and just start over.
There's a great, and I don't reference Wiki very often, but there's a terrific Wikipedia article on backup rotation methods.
Nice.
It makes me wonder because I'm not a big backup fan. Of all the things in IT that I love, all the technology that I'm a huge fan of and like talking about and like learning about, backups and printers, I hate them. I don't know why, just hate them. So I look at this article about these countless backup methodologies, these rotation schemes, and I just can't help but wonder who comes up with this stuff.
That is in somebody's wheelhouse.
Who is as excited about backups as I am about virtualization? I get that that's how it's working. Someone out there is just, backups are the greatest thing ever. I'm just not that guy, so it baffles me when I see something that deep on backup scheme or backup rotation
Kudos
schemes.
to them.
Yeah, it's awesome. But if you want Wikipedia, great article on backup rotation schemes.
Which actually brings us to a demo for Windows Backup.
Which hopefully I can do.
I have faith in you.
Oh, I can. I have it installed. So the biggest caveat, a very good point to make, Windows Server has a backup tool within called Windows Backup. That tool is not installed by default. However, in a slightly more confusing note, if you go into Administrative Tools, there is, I'm sorry, it's not, yeah, right here, Windows Server Backup. Now, if I don't have Windows Server Backup installed, this is here. If I do have Windows Server Backup installed, this is here. And what will happen, I'll open this up. On mine, it's installed. But if it's not, what will happen is it will tell you backup's not installed, you need to install it. You can actually open the software to get the warning that the backup's not installed and you need to install it. Once that's done, however, you can very easily set up local backups, local data. This backup is friendly to, I believe, all Microsoft technologies. It's Exchange friendly, SQL friendly, as far as I know. I don't do SQL backups, so I couldn't tell you that for sure. I know it does Exchange. I'm doing Exchange backups with it. And eventually it will come up with some backups. But it's relatively straightforward. Oh, that's right. My external drive is actually unplugged right now. So all sorts of failures probably about 2 weeks back. I can't go back any farther. I wonder when the last one was that ran. No, it doesn't tell me when the last good one was. But I have a backup job in here. View details. Operation failed. That's all it's going to tell me. I remember when progress bars used to mean something. Not anymore. Now they just taunt you. So here's the backup I have scheduled. It's one wizard. This is it right here. You're looking at it. Backup configuration, which items, when do you want it to happen, where do you want it to go. It's a really straightforward process. And then you can do your types. There's differential, there's incremental. Same idea, same options. This is, I don't know if I'd say this is or isn't an enterprise tool. I'm going to go ahead and say probably not because it's local. It's local backups on a local server that you manage one at a time. It's not manage these 100 servers or these 1,000 servers backups and keep track of all of them in one place. So it's a great tool for local backups. Something great to learn. Definitely good information to have for this exam and for managing small, medium business networks.
Backups are important.
They are. As much as I hate backups. I mean, I hate saying it. I just don't like them. They're just terrible to me, but they are very critical. You should absolutely have them all the time. And I do.
You do.
Except they're not.
Sometimes it runs.
When the external drive is plugged in.
When I think of backups, I always I think of this company that used to give backup software for free. So the backup software was free.
But you couldn't restore?
The restore program cost money. So you could back up for free, and you're like, woo, I have this free backup program, and it's great. And it was a pretty full-featured backup program. But then when it failed and you had to restore, and I believe the restore program was actually expensive.
I imagine it was. What a terrible and amazing business plan. Why do I not come up with these things? Wow. Talk about heat of the moment, too. It's not like you can fight your way out of paying for that.
No.
Huh. Noted.
Okay, shadow copies. Introduced in Windows Server 2003. It, at that point, was a new feature called shadow copies. And what this enabled is, as revisions of the file were done, it would kind of keep those in line.
Yeah, this is almost more of an end user semi-backup tool.
Yeah. I don't know about, I've never used this version of shadow copy. I know that shadow copy on SharePoint can get large quickly.
Oh, your versions?
Yes. When you have versioning turned on, it can get large quickly. So that would be my concern in this environment, is that it could get large quickly.
If you're in an environment where you're worried about versions, less backup and more versioning, content management solutions are going to be
a content management solution.
Look into content management systems and use those. SharePoint is a decent one. There are some caveats to document management when it comes to version control, at least in the last couple of versions. So.
Pre-boot recovery tools, the recovery console, system repair, and Windows recovery environment. So if you're having problems getting into your boot environment, these are tools that can help you. One thing that you might have to do is get your install media, boot your install media, and then go into your system recovery console.
That's possible. It's very possible. Now, with I think we have a demo, I'm guessing, on the next slide. Is that right?
We don't, but we can.
No, that's all right.
There's always time for a demo.
Not yet.
Okay.
Carry on.
Okay. Are you sure you want me to carry on?
I'm sure.
Okay, because it's time to hurt your feelings. We're done.
There is no demo?
No, there's no demo. We're done.
I took the demo out for this one.
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
that's all right.
Apparently, we're done.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
Are you?
Yeah.
I feel like there's
Our
more.
producer's okay with that.
I feel like there's more we should tell them.
There's
Look at our names are
more.
Our names are on the bottom.
Yeah, he really tells them when we're done. He's like,
here's their names. Get out.
He's going to push the button and just cut us off.
Yeah.
There's a lot more we should tell them, but that's what the future modules are for.
True. And in the scheme of things, this is a fundamentals course.
It is. Yeah, I'm struggling with that a little bit in some of these topics.
It's hard not to. There's so much to share and so much that we want to tell you. It's not like we're trying to hold back. There's the whole.
I'm trying to, because it's virtualization. Let's go for the next 3 days.
Let's chat. Let's have a conversation. These are topics to get you interested to go learn more. That's the way I look at these. These are topics to introduce you to new concepts, new ideas that you may, at that point, go seek out and find more information.
Well, and that's what the exam's for. You take this exam, and then you want to know more. Now you got the MCSA track.
Correct.
Now you get to learn about Server 2012, and then you get to learn about private clouds and System Center, and then you learn about, I'm up to almost 30 certs, so get started.
Nice.
Get going.
Well,
That's what we have. Yeah, we'll be back for module 5.
I think we're on
This was
5.
4, yeah.
Wow,
this was 4. Awesome.